right. Yeah. Like I said, this month's presentation is on making scale rope. Now, just as a caveat, this is not for the guys that only do sticks and strings. I've seen a lot of, more modern vessels that you've got, like with a tugboat, you've got your tow lines, your mooring lines. I know I've seen Don with some of his models that he puts cordage on them and stuff like that. So, making your own rope is kind of a part of that process. You go to the next slide, please. Oh, no. And just some of the references that I've used for this, and I've got the references here. These are some pretty good books, not only for rope making, but for just various aspects of rigging a ship or doing different things. Where I learned a lot about making rope, I don't know if you've heard of this lady called Ola Bachvarov. Yep. She's a Ukrainian female modeler, fantastic modeler. I would kind of equate her to the Jean of sticks and strings. She is a very fantastic, modeler for doing a lot of sailing ships. But she has a YouTube video on her website, and a lot of actually where I found the threads that I use was from her website. So, and then there's also some other stuff out there on the website for doing different things. Go to the next one if you would, please. Oops. Okay, so okay. Why should I do it? Okay, again, if you guys are buying kits, if you've seen the rope that comes in the kits nowadays, it's some pretty horrible stuff. It's made of nylon. Probably go to the next one. Yeah, the stuff that's in the kits nowadays really doesn't look very good. So a lot of what you can make on your own, and I've got some samples up here if you guys want to, I can probably kind of pass them around a little bit, that what I can make on this machine looks so much better than what comes in the kits nowadays. It's, not funny.
That actually is one.
Which one is the
big button?
Big button. Okay. Nowadays, the stuff that's commercially available is getting harder and harder to find. A couple months ago, I was on the Siren Ship Model website, and Chuck Pissarro was saying on here he's giving up making rope because it's just he's getting older. It's taking too much of his time, and it's just not worth the amount of time that he has to put into it. So he's no longer doing it. Right about now, the only website that I've found that actually makes commercially available scale rope is a place called ropesofscale.com up in Canada. I know Sean just bought some thread and some stuff from them recently. One of the issues with them is because they're in Canada, the import fees cost more than what the actual material costs. As I was on there, these are spools, or they're 10,000 meter spools of thread, and the thread itself costs about $20, and it costs about the same to ship it. So, but once you get that spool of thread, you can make a lot of rope with that spool of thread. And again, what I need from my model is not commercially available. From what I've seen of the Ropes of Scale website, they do not make anchor cable. All they do is they make just the standard 3-strand rope, and that's all they make. So if you need a piece of anchor cable for your model, the only way to get it is to make it yourself, or come to me and I'll make it for you. Okay, and then hey, learn a new skill. All right. Kind of just go into some of the technical aspects of the actual rope making. The main 3 types of rope that are out there, first of all, is your hawser laid rope, which is your normal 3-strand rope. It's the most widely used on a ship. Shroud laid rope will be used for the shrouds and stays, and that's a 4-strand rope. And then your cable laid rope, essentially you're taking 3 pieces of 3-strand rope, twisting that into the cable to get your anchor cable.
Can you say that again? The last one.
Okay, for anchor cable, it's essentially a 9-strand piece of rope. And to get there, you take 3 of your 3-strand pieces and then twist those three pieces together to get your piece of anchor cable. Okay. So, and this kind of details a little bit more. With your hawser laid rope, it's your standard 3-strand rope. The final twist on it is going to be in a right hand or clockwise twist. Now, what they do, one of the important things when you're making rope is as you're twisting it together, each successive layer gets twisted in the opposite direction from the initial layer. So, like if you're making a huge piece of rope, you start out with the yarns that make the threads. Those yarns get twisted clockwise. To twist the yarns into the strands, you twist it counterclockwise. And then to twist the final strands into your finished rope, again goes clockwise. And it's those opposing twists that makes the rope hold together when it's finally finished. A good video I've seen of this over in Chatham, England, the Royal Dockyard over there, their rope walk is still in operation today. And they actually make a lot of the cordage for all of the museum ships that are out there. But their rope walk is like 1,300 feet long, and they actually still make all of these. They've got some videos on making the cordage. Sir.
I saw that thing. It's motorized now.
Right, it's motorized nowadays.
Apparently, they use like 1,000-foot rope to make a 750. To finish off.
Right. Yeah, because unfortunately, one of the things about when you're twisting the threads and stuff into your finished rope, it does shrink by about 15 to 20% when you from the initial threads to when you're finished. That's just because of the twisting together. Okay. Okay, so that's your normal 3-strand hawser. All of your running rigging on a ship is going to be hawser laid rope. Okay. And the shroud laid rope, again, it's also the finished rope is twisted clockwise or with a right hand twist to it. You're just adding one more strand to it. So you have a 4-strand instead of a 3-strand rope. One of the reasons why they used the 4-strand for the shrouds and stays is that extra strand makes it a lot stiffer and less prone to stretching and things like that. So it's more suitable for using on your standing rigging. Okay.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
There's 5.
Okay, now, kind of a caveat. On the full-size rope that they make, they would have a 5th strand going through the middle that only has about half of the threads that the outer strands
like
do.
A center runner.
Right.
Okay.
For modeling purposes, you don't need to do that.
So I kept seeing 4 in my.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes.
5, and
and
I'm
then kind of
confused.
in here, yeah, the actual full-size shroud, for some reason, when they twist those 4 strands together, it does leave a little hollow space in the middle,
Okay.
and they use that smaller strand to kind of fill in that
So it
space in the
doesn't
middle.
chafe in use.
Right,
and that,
right.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
But for modeling purposes, if you're doing something this small, it doesn't leave that space in the middle of it. Now, another caveat to this as well. In a lot of the smaller scales, like even 1/48 scale and smaller, you can't tell the difference between 4-strand and 3-strand. It's unless you're really, really looking close, you can't see the difference between the two. So my advice to you is if you want to start making rope, stick with 3-strand and just use that to make what you need. Okay. Because there really is, unless you really want to get into the super detail and go ahead and make the 4-strand, that works just as well. Okay. And also finally, the cable laid, mostly used for anchor cables. And again, you're taking 3 pieces of your normal hawser laid rope, twisting those counterclockwise to get your anchor cable. Okay. Now, I've heard most of the time it's used just for your anchor cables. I've also seen some blogs where they're saying that on the lower shrouds of the ships like the HMS Victory, that they actually use cable laid rope for the lower shrouds. How true that is, I don't know. I've never actually been over there to see it, so I really don't know. Plus, most of your lower shrouds are going to be served anyways for weather protection, so I'm not sure how well you can see it or not. But typically, this is just going to be used for your anchor cable. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You said you couldn't tell the difference between the 3 and the 4 strand. Can you tell the difference between the 3 strand and the cable laid?
Absolutely.
You can.
Yeah, there is a visual difference between the two of them. Yes. And unfortunately, I don't know how well I can show it. I've got some samples up here. Once we finish the presentation, you guys are more than welcome to come up and take a look at the samples. I've got a couple pieces of cable up here. Now, one of the things I like, and I'll get into some of the materials, but what I like about using this really fine thread is I can make some really small cables.
Just a quick question.
Sir.
The visual difference between cable and Hosser laid, is it just because it's left twist instead of right twist, or can you actually see the multiple strands?
You can see the multiple strands in there, along with the fact that it is a left-hand twist. You can see the other strands, how they're twisted in there. Yes, so there is a visual difference as well, along with seeing the left-handed twist. Okay. Basic equipment. I've seen a lot of things online where these guys get some really elaborate rope walks for making rope, and it works out pretty well. Most of the ones I've seen that have a lot of little mechanical things on it, you can only use one thread per strand. So if you want to make different diameter ropes, you just increase the diameter of the thread that you're using. With these, if I want to change the diameter of the rope that I'm making, I add more threads to each strand. And that's kind of the advantage of this. Plus, what I've got here, I'm not really limited as to how long of a piece of rope I can make. The only thing, I just need a longer piece of board to make a longer piece of rope. And in fact, this is just for my demonstration here, but at home, I have about a 16-foot long piece of 1x6 that I mount the ends of the rope walk on that to make what I want for when I'm making rope. In fact, in some of the videos I've seen where Chuck Pissarro was still making his rope, I think the longest piece he made was about a 30-foot piece. Same thing. He's using the same rope walk here. He just had them set further apart to make whatever he wanted to make. It gets a little bit more cumbersome the longer you get. So probably that 16-foot piece that I have is about as long as you really want to go. But it doesn't have to be very elaborate. The one rope walk that I have in the front, if you've ever been on the Model Expo or Model Shipways website, this is the very basic one that they sell there. It only has the ability of making 3-strand rope, but again, that's pretty much about all you've needed. Now, initially, it comes with like a little hand crank to twist the threads together. I've modified it so I can use my drill that makes it a lot quicker. So really, what takes the longest about setting all this up is actually tying the threads onto the rope walk. The actual process of spinning the threads into the rope only takes just a few minutes for each piece. Like I said, this other one that I've got was the one from Chuck Pissarro's Siren Ship Model website. This is the one that I primarily use, and I really kind of like it. I've made a few modifications to it for some other things that I do with it, but for the most part, I can make either 3-strand or 4-strand on this, depending on what I want to make. And it's fairly inexpensive. So, okay. As far as the materials to make your rope, it's really kind of a personal preference. Over the few years that I've been making it, I've made stuff from some cotton, 100% cotton machine quilting thread that you can buy at Walmart. The only problem with the cotton thread and even the polyester and cotton thread is when you get done making your rope, you have to kind of wet it down just a little bit for it to hold its shape once you take it off the rope walk. The polyester stuff, once you get it spun, you don't need to do any wetting of it before you take it off the rope walk, and it'll pretty well hold together. The bad part about polyester is when you go to cut your piece of rope, you need to put a drop of CA where you're going to cut it. Otherwise, it will fray out pretty bad. But again, it's more for your personal preference. In fact, I've even got a piece in my queue of models to build. I have a 1/32 scale tugboat. I took some hemp jewelry cord, again from Walmart, and made a piece that I'm going to be using as the tow line on the back of my tugboat. Again, materials is pretty much personal preference on what you want to use. Where I got the colors and the thread for the polyester stuff, again, was from Ola's video on rope making. This is the type of thread that she uses, and the colors that she uses. So I figured if she uses it, it's probably a good selection for threads. Yes, sir.
Yeah, just a quick question. You mentioned cotton and cotton polyester and stuff like that. Isn't linen sometimes used for longevity if you want to make really long lasting models?
Can't get it anymore.
That's the problem with it.
Was that?
You can't
Get linen thread anymore. Nobody makes it. Well, in fact, Chuck Pissarro, when he first started making rope, was using a cotton linen blend. He had to switch to polyester because his source for the cotton linen blend went out of business. So you can't find it. So again, yes, sir. Oh, sorry.
How long, do you know how long ago? Because as of 2 years ago, I know of a possible source. Maybe they've gone out of business in the last 2 years.
Which is that?
I think
I
that's
don't
about.
remember it off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think that's about the time that
might-
Chuck had to switch over from the cotton
I'll
linen
check.
to the
I'll
polyester.
check to see if it's.
You might be able to get it somewhere in Europe.
It's getting really tough to find that stuff. Like I said,
And you
even-
also need to get really high quality or it's going to have a lot of bumps in it. That's another issue with linen thread is that it's not as uniform in thickness.
I don't want to
go ahead.
make it too long, but back in the 60s or 70s, there used to be a company called Cutty Hank or something like that. The linen was cheap and you could get all different.
For fly
Sizes and okay.
Yeah, and then model shipways, they
Right.
could get it through them. But then it disappeared. You can't get it anymore.
Right.
It was always labeled for fly fishing. I have some empty
Was it?
spools, not
I-
full ones.
I have one at home. That's it.
Like I said, what I would recommend if you really want to get into doing the rope making, what I would recommend is this is made by a company called Gutermann. And
It's a big job.
It's a big company. Now they make different styles of thread. This is called their E type of thread. One of the advantages of this stuff is it has no initial twist in it. A lot of the stuff that you'll find in stores or in whatever normally has a right-hand twist to it. So you got to be careful when you go to spin that into your rope to take that initial twist in your thread into account. With this, you don't have to because there's no twist in it. So again, my personal recommendation is using this Gutermann E-thread. In fact, one of the issues that Chuck Pissarro was using, he was using a different style of Gutermann thread. And one of the things he had to do to get his thread to kind of hold together after he finished it is he had to bake it in the oven for about 5 minutes to get it to hold. This stuff, you don't need to do that.
You ever do any dyeing of the thread?
I don't. It comes already this color. And this is what I normally use, so I don't have to do any
Yeah,
dyeing.
it's good for running.
Well, like I said, this is good for your running rigging, and then the darker color is for your standing rigging. It's a really nice, kind of simulates the tarred rigging for your shrouds and stays and things like that. So it really works well. Any other questions on the materials at all?
The only thing is, this you have to use CA.
Unfortunately, yes.
Regular glue won't hold it.
Right. You have to use CA glue when you're gluing your knots and stuff like that. Otherwise, it won't hold. Correct.
But wire.
If you can find it in the right diameter that you need,
Can that be turned the same way?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never tried using wire. what I'll have to do is I'll have to go to a craft store and see if I can find some really fine jewelry wire and give it a shot.
I was looking that up a while back, and again, I can't commit things to memory because my brain doesn't work that way. But I was trying to find sources for, how fine of a wire can you go without getting into the high cost industrial thinness.
Well, they
And
usually
there
do
was,
a site
Yep.
that
yeah,
sent me.
I've been getting a lot of Facebook ads for wire instead of rope on some of the ship modeling groups.
anyway, it's out there in some pretty small
Right.
dimensions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
no,
I've-
I mean, you're
I've
talking
got-
Finer than
Yes,
hair.
sir.
I've seen
Oh, yeah,
the
much-
real fine
much
wire
finer.
Ace Hardware comes to about 2 feet length.
Well, now I've also at a couple of the craft stores, I've seen it's used for jewelry making, and it's got some really, really fine
Or
wire.
even fishing heater line.
Right.
Using a variety.
So, but I to be honest with you, I've never tried spinning that into a larger diameter rope.
Yeah.
I've got some at home that I was going to use for the mast stays for my African Queen model. I was going to use it as is off the spool and not try and spin anything. So I haven't really made
In
it.
principle, I mean, period, it's been.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because I think most of your small cables are actually braided instead of spun, aren't they?
I have an article in my book, an article, German guy built a modern farmhouse at 7 ship about 1:100 scale, so big one. But he used wire rigging for his standing rigging,
Okay.
and he used like 8 or 9 threads to make the wire. So
Okay.
that rigging, if you know what to buy, you can buy it extremely thin.
Okay. And like I said, guys, I've not tried using it. I'll have to see what I can find and see if I can make some and kind of get back with you on that.
Yeah, big problem is finding it.
Right. That's kind of the issue. So is finding that.
I'm gonna need
If I were
some.
looking for very fine wire, if you wanted to find a steel or annealed iron wire, I would lean towards looking at MSC Direct, or
Okay.
possibly if you wanted to deal with very fine brass or non-ferrous wire, Rio Grande Jewelry Supply.
Okay.
Those are two, I mean, they're more industrial, they're not our world suppliers typically, but
Okay.
MSC Direct is a good location.
Like I said, I've not tried doing it.
I've never made any, so I'm
Okay.
speculating.
Okay. So and like I said, Gene, I'll have to see if I can see what I can find and get back with you on that. Now,
Yeah,
what,
I'll take 10, 15-foot lengths,
now what? Well, I guess the question is, what final diameter do you? We can talk about this
Yeah,
later.
it's-
What final diameter do you need, and then we can go from there. Okay. All right. So, anything else on materials before I go on? Okay. So, anything else?
I said, moving on.
Okay, moving on. All right. So now, once you've got the rope made, a lot of your standing rigging will have some additional things done to it to kind of help keep it from being chafed or weather protection on a full size ship. And that process is called worming, parceling, and serving. And again, I'll kind of go through all 3 processes, but for the purposes of most model scales, the only thing that you would want to do is on your lower shrouds and things like that is do the serving on your forward shrouds and then where the shrouds go around the mast tops. And that basically is a chafing protection. But to kind of start, the worming, what it does is if you look at a piece of rope, you've got some gaps or valleys in between the strands. And what that worming does is it fills in those gaps to make your piece of rope more cylindrical along its whole length. Okay. That's all that worming really does. Again, for modeling purposes, about the only place you really would need to do something like that is if you've got a fairly large piece of rope that you're working on and want to do the serving on it. And actually, in some places, they would actually worm and serve an anchor cable where it was most likely to chafe against the hawse hole when it was deployed. Okay. The next process is called parceling. And essentially what they're doing after you do the worming, they would take strands or strips of tar-coated canvas and wrap it around in overlapping layers around the rope. Again, this is starting your weather protection and your chafing protection on your line. Okay. Then the final piece would be your serving. And what you're really doing here is you are very tightly wrapping smaller pieces of line around the rope. And what that does is it actually compresses the fibers along with the tar on the outside of it. It compresses the fibers, which makes it more water resistant. And then the tar on the outside also coats it and keeps the water from getting into it. So it's more of a weather and chafing protection. But again, for modeling purposes, about the only real processes you would really need to do is the serving. And I've got a piece up here that shows what it looks like when you do the whole process of worming, parceling, and serving. Okay. This is kind of a little bit of about what it looks like when you've got some of your shrouds and stays. I found this picture, I think it's on Chuck's website for the Revenue Cutter Church. And this shows how the thread is wrapped really tightly around it for your chafing protection. Okay, now, this is a machine. I didn't bring mine because it's a little bit time consuming to go through the process, but I've got this one piece that you guys can take a look at. And essentially what this does is the rope that you want to serve goes through these two lower gears and gets tied off at each end on your pieces here. And then you would actually rotate the piece of rope that you're serving, and the thread that you're using to serve it with is on this lower tube, and you just feed it on there and make sure that as you're doing it, you get a really nice tight layer on it. And I don't know how some of you guys have different knots. I usually start and stop it with what's called a clove hitch, and that holds it very well on each end of it. Yeah, I think that's about it. So any other questions before, sir?
Might be a corollary or kind of off track. Is there a cheat sheet or a scale of what size diameter ropes you should use for the certain scale models? What tool you guys use to get it accurate? Or
a lot of it is, I guess, trying to find the research material that tells you what the actual size rope would have been used, say for like a tow line on the tugboat. I'm not sure exactly what the diameter of the rope was used there, but typically you just take the full size diameter and divide it by whatever scale you're in.
okay, that's good.
And then that gives you the diameter that you're going to be needing for your.
That's easy enough. Thank you.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is experience when you make a rope right down.
Right. And a lot of what I'm doing is I kind of experiment a little bit with this to see, what kind of works for the different sizes. So a lot of it's just, kind of doing a little bit of playing around with it to get what you
It's a
need.
good idea. Just get the cable and divide by the scale. Okay.
Yeah. But I've got, again,
I'd love just to have a cheat sheet and go, okay, use that one.
I've got some samples up here of different materials and things, and you can kind of take a look at them to see what it looks like. And if you're interested in getting into the rope making, again, if you have any other questions besides just the presentation today, please feel free to get with me, and I'll be more than happy to do a one-on-one with you if you want to. All right. So the first thing I'm going to be doing here is this is all the Gutermann E thread that I've got on the first rope walk for making a 3-strand rope. I've got 7 threads in each of the strands. And essentially what I do is The one end here has gears on it that when I use my drill, it spins the gears and twists the threads into the individual strands. And then once that's done, go to the other end, and then I'll twist the strands into the finished rope. Because it does, that's all right. Yep. Now, when you're using these rope walks, if you're using a drill, make sure it's set to go, the drill is set to go counterclockwise, because otherwise you're spinning it in the wrong direction.
You want me to move that camera so it's not your way?
Yeah. That kind of,
Yeah.
adjust it a little bit.
Where would you like to focus? Anywhere?
Probably, I guess, right now, maybe on this end. And like I said, it will shrink a little bit, so. But, a lot of it's just kind of doing a visual check of it, just kind of make sure it kind of gets it down to where you want.
How do you know that you spun it enough times?
Looking for about 45 degrees.
Yeah, a lot of it's, again, was kind of a visual.
Could you annotate a little? You're spinning one strand right now?
What I'm doing is I'm spinning the individual threads into the 3 strands that's going to make up the final rope. Okay. And those are being spun counterclockwise. And then when I get ready to spin these 3 strands into the finished rope, those are going clockwise.
You just have a number of strands all together and you're spinning them?
What I've done here is on each of the hooks, I've got 7 threads that I've spun the threads into these strands. Okay. So now that I've got this, I can clamp this end down there and then spin the 3 strands into the finished rope. Right. And it's going to be, what's nice about, like I said, this is going to be fairly, it's a fairly thin piece of rope.
We need 5 strands. The only thing is that 2 strands, so make a good hole. Your minimum of 3.
So you just maintain a little tension with your hand.
Yes.
Go on. Okay.
That makes sense.
So I'm not ready for that.
No. I was at one of our friends. I was doing this. It was made one. That's just really.
You can see right now that it's actually spinning those 3 strands into my finished piece of rope.
I would have something at home. Fine. No.
Now, basically, you can kind of see right now that I went ahead and now have a finished piece of rope. Now all I got to do is just cut it off the rope walk, and I usually tie the ends to keep them from unraveling, but that's pretty much it. Like I said, the most time consuming of this whole process is actually tying the threads onto the rope.
When you cut shorter lengths off of that longer one, you have to keep tying it off each time or using CA to keep it from unraveling.
You have to use CA. My advice is use CA glue to before you make the cut. Otherwise, yeah, you can kind of see already on the end of it how much it's kind of fraying. So, yeah.
Can you burn it?
I don't think burning would work on it. Plus, it really wouldn't look very good either. Yeah, using CA works a whole lot better than anything else.
Cut them all off.
Well, I'll go ahead and pass that around so you guys can get a little bit of visual.
So I sent it out. First month.
Now, again, that was the 3-strand piece that I was making. And I'm kind of doing a 4-strand just to kind of give you to really show you that there's not much difference between the 3-strand and the 4-strand. And again, I've used the same 7 threads in each of the strands, so it's the same. So that will have 21 threads on it. This one has 28 threads. So it might be a slightly larger diameter because of the different number of threads, but there's not much visual difference between the two.
Just to review the eyelets that are holding the 7 threads, you spun those in that. You can spin those on that jig.
Yes, this end has gears on it that spin the hooks that spin the threads into the strands.
Okay.
And then the opposite end, the whole piece spins to do that.
Yeah. Gears on one end to spin the strand.
Right.
Go to the other end. Like the strands.
Right.
How long does the setup take you to get all of the 28 strands on there?
To do both of these last night took me about 45 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, and it takes me about 5 minutes to actually twist it.
And most of that's clamp time.
Okay, so again, I've spun the individual threads using the gears on here. I've spun the individual threads into the 4 strands for the final rope. And then that's what these clamps are really nice.
That's a very great.
Now, Kevin, when you pull tension on that, how do you know how much tension you want, or does it pull itself and you just kind of guide?
It's kind of by feel. It does want to kind of move by itself. So you just kind of keep a little bit of tension on it so that it doesn't sag.
You time the amount of time that you're using the drill in both directions to even out the twists?
No, it's kind of, again, it's more by feel and kind of just by visual.
Okay.
I think for those who want to get more into it, Chuck Passaro has a YouTube thing where he makes
Now, again, I've gone ahead using this end of the machine. I've
well, that's That's what doesn't spin. Is this a lot of steps through there.
Like I said, if you compare the two pieces, there's not a lot of visual difference.
Yeah.
One is a bit thicker.
That one possibly will be a little bit thicker because it has more threads in it.
Yeah.
But as far as visually, if I wanted to make both of them the same diameter, I would just reduce the number of threads that I have now. Yeah.
Hold on.
Are there any other questions? Like, unfortunately, it's a fairly simple process once you get the threads on there. Unfortunately, it's a lot of feel. It's just kind of, and a lot of it's just kind of playing around with it to get the feel for it.
Questions for Kevin?
Any now, like I said, I've got some other samples up here. If we have a few minutes before we get into the show and tell,
We'll take a break in between.
please come on up and take a look at this stuff, and I can show you a little bit more. Sir.
Where do you get those?
The rope walks. Okay, I got mine from the Siren Ship Model website. It's one that Chuck Pissarro sells on his website, and that would be the one I would recommend somebody getting.
And if you're gonna do that, he makes them in batches and they sell out quickly, so you need to check the size pretty carefully.
Yeah, ever since he stopped making rope, his rocks are being flying off the shelf.
Okay, yeah, I haven't.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk on model ship ways about that he can't keep them in stock fast enough. So he's just changed his problem from one to the other.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know how long it takes him to actually make up the okay.
What I am gonna suggest is that if we're running really well on time, we take a 15-minute break, which will give people, as long as it's okay with you, Kevin,
Sure,
time to come up and see things. And then at 1:15, we'll start our show and tell.